Welcome to Beyond the Briefing, I'm Shannon Marvell. Ward 4 at Dr. Gray's Hospital in Elgin has been a quiet lifeline for those in Murray facing mental health crises. A place of care, recovery and safety. But now its future hangs in the balance as decisions loom and officials remain vague. For some people, this is more than a hospital ward. It's about access, community, and what happens when vital care feels just out of reach. Joining me today is Lewis McBlane running the story. So, Lewis, thank you for joining us today. Tell us a little bit more about what's happening at Ward 4.
So Ward 4 is Murray's only inpatient mental health unit where adults who need a bit of, they need some residential support, they need to stay in hospital for a little while as a result of their mental health, they basically get sent to Dr. Gray's Ward 4. But over the last few years, there have been some pretty serious concerns raised about the safety of that unit and the setup and some of the design of it and whether it's really offering the safety that the patients need. As a result, there have been some real fears that inspectors could come in out of nowhere and sanction NHS Grampian over that. So I did a story. It was just after a visit from the Health Secretary to Dr. Gray's. I found meeting reports which suggested that continuing Ward 4 as an inpatient unit is basically not tenable anymore. And there are plans that until now have been kind of kept quite tightly under wraps to basically change that from being an inpatient service. So patients would effectively have to go through to Aberdeen, to the Royal Cornhill Hospital. When I asked the Health Secretary about that, his response was that he can't give any firm commitments over it. So yeah, it's something that could well be concerning for people who may have to rely on that service in future.
How far is Aberdeen from Elgin? It's best part of an hour's drive, is that right?
It's an hour and a half.
So having that travel included, even if it is to visit someone, for example, it takes a lot of your day. But also, I think definitely when it comes down to mental health, you have people close by if something should happen. Looking at some of the inspection reports, for example, there was safety issues. Was there anything else in Ward 4 that they were concerned about? Was there anything like structural? Is it just sort of patient safety that they were aware of?
Yeah, it was mainly the patient safety aspect of it. There was all sorts of details about like windows that were smashed in the unit and had been left for quite a while. And then also kind of like door latches and handles were just taken out of doors in the unit and then just left, compromising that element of patient privacy as well. So those were the main concerns. But I suppose the real crux of the issue is that the Scottish Government had pledged to give funding to sort all of these issues and would basically bring it up to scratch. That was tied to another project in the room adjacent to Ward 4, where they would be putting in a new MRI scanner. But the two projects were kind of bundled together, so the Ward 4 stuff relied on the other project. But in January 2024, the Scottish Government indefinitely paused all of its capital projects within NHS Grampian, I think excluding a hospital in Aberdeen. And what that meant was nothing has changed or improved at the unit since then. And other meeting documents have confirmed that NHS Grampian couldn't find the cash to sort it out from within its own budgets. So if there's no change and no improvement, it's hard to see what the option is other than closing it for NHS Grampian.
The Health Secretary, so it's Neil Gray that we're talking about, he cited that the capital budgeting constraints from Westminster were, am I correct in saying that it was an issue and why funding couldn't be continued?
Yeah, that was definitely what he was saying. Over the last decade or so, maybe the last 5 years, there's been a pretty hefty reduction in the money that the Scottish Government gets for capital projects from the UK government. It's debated the extent to which that's the root cause of it. It's definitely a factor that's been mentioned in relation to all sorts of capital projects, be it the A9, the A96, or these improvements at Ward 4.
You said as well that he said that there's no confirmation on it just yet, but is there a timeline for this decision to be made?
Yeah, I mean that's exactly the problem, is that really the issues should have been solved years ago. Fixing the problems at Ward 4 are pretty significantly overdue at this stage. That's the situation that NHS Grampian is in at the moment. Is, well, it seems unlikely that we're going to get the money to do this. We just basically have this ticking time bomb of a mental health unit that the inspectors could decide at a moment's notice just isn't up to scratch.
Is there something that NHS Grampian are doing to help with the financial support? Are they asking for example, community funding?
I've not heard of anything along those lines going on, but I think the amount of money that would need to be raised is only something the scale of a government can actually provide enough cash to carry out those works. The next thing that we'll hear about it is to do with this project called the Grampian Mental Health Bed Base Review. There were initial plans to change Ward 4, dating back over a year at this point. Meeting documents have showed that it kind of kept being batted away because people said, right, we really don't have enough information here or enough confirmation to make a decision. So that was eventually wrapped up into one big review of mental health services across the Grampian region. And I believe that's set to report in September. So there's a few months yet until we'll know for sure what's going on.
Going back to Neil Gray, he spoke of possibly a more appropriate service in the area. Do you think that he's envisioning a big shift in inpatient care? Is he looking about keeping it local? You're an hour and a half away from Aberdeen, and you're the same if you decided to come to NHS Highland. Did you get any idea about what his plans are, or whether he was confident in a future plan?
The phrase that's been bandied about through reports and stuff, and I need to stress that a lot of this stuff is quite tightly under wraps, so it's just catching scraps here and there sometimes. My understanding is that NHS Grampian's looking to invest in a community approach to it, where basically you try to get people earlier in their treatment journey. So actually, rather than people ending up being admitted immediately to Ward 4 because they're in crisis, you can kind of catch people earlier in the process, and you can maybe see about getting people to go out to their homes and deliver counselling or other services like that. That's very much how it's been packaged, which also goes along with the real financial crisis that NHS Grampian is facing at the moment, where they have the highest total overspend of any health board in Scotland, and they've just recently been escalated to, it's called stage 4, but it's basically the last level of government oversight before the government takes direct control over the health board's decisions and how it makes cuts, basically. And the thing about these community approaches and closing wards and sending people elsewhere is that it is also cheaper. They argue it's more effective for the patient, but there is an element where it's also something they're relying on to make the savings that one way or another they're going to be forced into carrying out.
My final question is, in your opinion, and you looking at this story and you seeing it unravel and progress, what do you think is going to happen in, say, the next 2 years?
I'm pretty confident that Ward 4 will be shut down as an inpatient ward, potentially the space used for other hospital beds, and then people will be on the road to Aberdeen or whatever community services that there's money left to draw up.
Well, let's hope that they make that decision sooner rather than later. Lewis, thank you very much for dropping in.
Thanks so much, Shannon. Cheers.
You've been listening to Beyond the Briefing, the stories behind the headlines, diving deeper into the biggest local stories in the Highlands. This podcast is brought to you by Highland News and Media. It's hosted by Shannon Marvell and produced by Christopher Dixon. If you enjoyed this show, make sure to subscribe and share with others who care about local journalism.